I get a lot of questions about demo reels and portfolio pieces and what to do in terms of creating art, especially at a time where there's a lot of questions about AI and the job market and our industry as a whole. And I wanted to take a minute to talk about what I think will be a really helpful way to build a portfolio or an artistic demo reel going forward into 2025 and beyond. Because as many of us know, when it comes to getting a creative job or a job in the creative field, resumes and cover letters are part of the process, but they're not the most important bit. Your demo reel or your portfolio is typically the thing that's going to make or break whether or not you get the job. The interview is a vibe check, and that's going to be a big part of just seeing if you gel with the team. But getting that opportunity and getting your foot in the door to, convince a company that you're worth interviewing, that's the tricky part. And one of the things that I think could be beneficial to artists actually getting in those rooms is to create an additional supplemental piece of content alongside each portfolio piece that you create. Now, this doesn't mean you need to make some big behind the scenes video or a breakdown or anything like that every time you animate something. What I think would be useful is to create almost a visual outline or some kind of a guide to your workflow, to your thought process, to the decisions you made along the way, the things that went well, or decisions that you end up going back on because you realize they just weren't the fit at the time. I'm suggesting that you document your creative process anytime you make a new piece of art. And this doesn't have to be a huge undertaking. This can be something that just kind of happens as you work. This is also one of the requirements of an animation challenge that I'm going to be helping judge with Autodesk. As you saw, this video is sponsored by Autodesk, and they're currently running the Make It Fly challenge, an animation and visual effects challenge centered around the idea of flight. It's really open-ended, so there's a lot of creative freedom in what you want to do. But the two things you need to do for that contest are to both create a piece of work, just something that is on theme, as well as documenting the process, exactly what I'm describing here. But it's something that I think that we should all be doing regardless of whether this is for an art challenge, an animation demo reel piece, or just something for our own creative growth. I'm gonna have a link to the challenge down below, and we'll talk a little bit more about it towards the end of the video. But any students watching this video should use this as a guide of how to do something like that, and use that challenge as an opportunity to practice this and create something for your demo reel. And if you've been keeping up with my recent videos, I just did one on facial animation motion capture with Unreal Engine. And in that video, I mentioned that I typically keep for myself sort of a Google Docs summary and journal of the things that I'm working on lately, because I keep running into all these technical issues that haven't really been well documented on the internet. And so I'm trying to keep track for myself what issues I run into, what I do to overcome them, the different things I tried, why they work, why they didn't. And that to me has been a really helpful sort of personal resource that I go back to when I go do that process again. So in 6 months when I go, I need to do another facial animation motion capture, shoot, I have this problem, I had that before, what did I do to fix it? If there's not an easily Googleable solution, I have my own resource that I built. And so in a selfish way, documenting your creative process in this sense can be a really helpful sort of breadcrumb trail for you to follow if you ever need to figure this out again a second time. This happens to a lot of artists who maybe publish a tutorial and then struggle with the same thing a couple years later and realize, oh, thank God there's a tutorial. Who made the, oh, that was me. I've done that. Very helpful. But walking back to the job search part of this, one of the reasons that I think this is such a valuable discussion to have and such a useful thing to do is because a lot of the times I think it's more valuable for a potential employer or a collaborator. I think it's more important for them to see how you think and how you tackle a problem and how creatively you decide to work through something than it is necessarily just seeing the final result. We all know how long this process takes. If you're a character animator or if you work in another part of our industry, everything we do takes a really long time. And it takes years to get good at these things. It takes years longer to master, and we're always learning more. But that's the thing, is with every project, there's more to learn, there's more hurdles to overcome. And I think that talking more about what those problems were, how you solved them, maybe some of the things you tried that didn't work, that is where I think a lot of the really interesting conversations lie in our industry. And we lose all of that when we just see the final piece, which is nice. Sometimes you just want to see the media. You just want to take in a thing, appreciate the art, and that's kind of the point. But what's usually valuable from artist to artist, you can watch someone's work and you can get inspired by it and you can be like, wow, that's really cool. I wonder how they did that. And oh, that's so cool. I can't wait to make something similar. But especially if you are, this is true across the board, but especially if you're at the student level, what's often more valuable is to hear about how that thing was created. Because it looked great when it's all finished, done, and polished, but it may not have always looked good. That's kind of the big thing with a lot of the movies and games and TV shows we watch is they didn't always start off that good, right? There's all the stories of the previous versions and all the work that went on the cutting room floor because it was made better. And it's fascinating to hear about these stories and to hear about these previous versions of movies. For example, it's my understanding that the movie Up from Pixar used to be a movie about two brothers who lived in castles in the clouds, and they were warring with each other or had some kind of a feud. I'm not really sure. That's very different than the movie we got. But that's the thing, is creativity evolves and our projects change over time. And I think that process is fascinating and interesting and helpful to those who want to learn more, and also can be potentially beneficial if you're trying to get a job. Because if you can show how you work through a problem, the things you tried, it's different than if you just show, here's my animation and here's my reference. That's cool to watch sometimes, but I think that rather than just focusing on, for example, reference and the animated final product, if we show the whole process, arguably you could say, well, then you're showing everything, all of the secrets and all the things that you did to come up with that. You're really taking all the magic out of it. Kinda, yeah, but often it's not the romantic thing that we're all like, wow, working at a studio. When you work at a studio, you realize how much work it is. It is a job, it is difficult. It's long hours of being creative on command. That's not easy. And working through those issues and having people around to help you do it is a big part of the studio culture. Even if you're working remote, being able to bounce ideas off your partner, off a family member, off a friend, or just to go out and people watch, that's all part of it. And that's something that I think we should be talking about more, and therefore we should be documenting that process. You should be sharing how you got to these things. And if you have something that you don't want to show, if you don't want to show your reference because it's too personal, or maybe you're not feeling super camera ready that day, but you filmed some stuff, you don't have to put everything out there. It's not that you have to do this. It's interesting to see where the shot started and how it evolved and how it got to be what it is now. And that's my soapbox on why I think we should do this. But in terms of how to do it and where to put it, well, where is easy? You could really do it anywhere. If you want to use social media, of course, you could use Instagram, have a carousel of images. You could do, document it over time with different video reels or something. You could have a YouTube channel where you talk about it, right? Like, you could do the social media approach to it. But you could just do a simple blog or just a page on your own website. If you don't want to deal with the whole website side of things, I'd recommend Artstation. Artstation has a ton of different artists just sharing their work and showing their process, and you can create these long pages showing different breakdowns of whatever the main piece is. It's kind of the perfect platform for this, at least if you're trying to have that visibility in the industry that people are maybe finding your work and seeing how it was done. That could potentially be a good place to just put these processes. Now, Instructables is the platform that the Autodesk Challenge is happening on, and that's kind of an educational space. And so that's a good example of how you might do it as sort of a guide if you're trying to show how you did it and trying to teach people what your process was like. And so I think if you're doing the challenge, you'll be using Instructables to actually make that guide. But for your day-to-day projects and the kind of demo reel pieces that you might be building up in the animation industry, I think Artstation is a really good place as well. And I haven't seen that many people use it like this yet. But hey, I know. This stuff's already a lot of work. You don't want to do more work, so why am I suggesting that you suddenly create a whole blog or a video or a breakdown? Here's how I think this should go down. When I'm working on a shot, when I'm animating something, I'm saving incrementally. I'm not just hitting Control S, Control S, Control S constantly and having one file that, if something goes wrong, I'm screwed. I'm saving as new versions. I'm saving incrementally pretty much every time I save, that I always have kind of these milestones to go back to. But what's nice about this is you can always go back to old versions and you can do old play blasts. So if you decide, oh, you know what, I really liked this idea or this thing that, kind of changed, if you're going back later realizing that you need an extra clip or you need an extra screenshot or something from a previous version, or you want to say, I want to show my blocking, my spline workflow, the polished animation, right? Like, you can jump back to those moments and you can do a quick play blast. It's not going to take you that long. What's probably even more useful than this, that's just a good way to work. But when you are doing a play blast or you're exporting or screenshotting something in your shot, just save it and keep it. Don't delete it. Don't let it be a temporary file. Make sure that you're just saving it in a folder and you're just labeling it version 1 blocking, version 2 blocking, version 3 blocking, and so on. And you're just kind of keeping track of it. Because by the end of the project, you'll have done all this work, taken all this time, you'll be done, and you won't probably want to go back to old versions, but you'll just have a folder of old play blasts of different versions that you can just pick kind of your favorites and just drop those in as the highlights. But again, this can be concept art, this can be design sketches or pose kind of thumbnails if you draw your poses out. This can be your reference, this can be just the drawings from your reference, any notes that you take on certain frames that are valuable to you, any research you do on acting or props or movies that you use as inspiration for the tone, different versions of the lighting, ideas for effects, different acting choices that you almost decided to do, or technical issues that you just got stuck on and you realize that, man, this was really hard, I couldn't figure this out, I actually didn't figure it out and I'm gonna leave it for next time and I'll come back to that in a future shot. Those kinds of little notes for yourself or in this documentation is just gonna be a really interesting window into how you work, how you think, how you work through a problem, and ultimately what kind of a team member you might be on somebody's production. And obviously, if it's for the job side of things, you probably will focus more on things that you feel like you did well than all the things you think you did wrong. But showing the struggle is human and it's relatable and it's something that we connect with. And if you share, yeah, this was really difficult and this is what I chose to do, it's showing that you actually did run across an obstacle and you're not afraid to admit that, and that you found some solution, at least for yourself, to be able to move forward. I think that's really valuable. And if you've watched my old video on interviewing at DreamWorks back when I first started my career, that interview was a train wreck. Constantly, things just going wrong the whole time. And that's part of the reason I got the job, is because I kept cool under pressure and I made it work. I think if we show more of the times that we struggle, it makes people root for us and want us to succeed. And I think it's gonna be a better way to get jobs than just relying solely on the demo reel and just the finished pieces, especially when things like AI are a conversation. Because I know some people are worried about AI. And if you show your creative thought process, it shows what you bring to the table in a way that AI doesn't show its work. It just spits out a final image. And I think that's just an interesting way that we can combat that thought process of just, you give a prompt and you have art. If you want to sort of, I don't know, advocate for yourself as an artist, show your process, show the thing that AI just kind of skips over. I think that's an interesting conversation. Here's a quick example of what something like this could look like. I built this little scene. I started with a blackout of an environment. I looked at different images as inspiration, and I put together just a rough approximation of what this scene could look like. I started bringing in these different assets and built the scene into something more realistic. Then I added foliage and I added a little bit of wind to that foliage to actually make it move around. I decided to put some different examples of some buttons I clicked, things of where I found stuff. So it's a helpful technical guide for anybody who's following and maybe you want some help with this kind of thing, but it also just showed kind of how I got from A to B. Eventually I started editing characters, figured out kind of what the mini story was I was gonna tell. And of course you can watch the full thing at different stages. Most of this I already had because I was just saving this stuff as I went, and other stuff I went back and just re-exported because it supported this documentation and it wasn't really that hard to do. But now I just have this resource of information and it lives on Artstation and there it is. I don't know if anything will ever come from it, but there it is. It wasn't that hard to make, and now I have for myself this little journal of this thing that I created. And if anybody ever benefits from it, all the better. And if it ever helps me get some kind of an opportunity, great. But it shows you a window into my brain while I was working on this particular project. I hope this video was helpful. I hope it inspires you to actually start doing this process. I'd love to see more people sharing their thought processes and just breaking down their work. It's such a fun thing to see. And if it were me doing the hiring, I would love to see this kind of stuff from somebody I was considering, because it would just tell me more about them as an artist. And if you're a student looking for a way to practice this, I'm gonna have a link down below to the Autodesk Make It Fly Challenge. This is a contest that I'm gonna be helping to judge. The theme is flight, and you can really go any direction you want with it, but this is a perfect way to test this whole thing out because the requirement is to make something, animation, visual effects, something, and to document the process using Instructables, their website for doing this. Like I said, I'll be judging. There's a ton of cool prizes, and I think that it's really cool because there's not like one big massive prize that only one person gets. There's lots of little prizes, so you actually have a really good chance of actually winning something if you want to participate. And I'm more excited to look at all the breakdowns than I am to even watch all the finished animations. I think it's gonna be so much fun to see what people do and how they get to the final product that they submit. So a huge thank you to Autodesk for putting that challenge on and for sponsoring this video. Again, I'll link to that challenge down below. You have plenty of time to work on it. You don't have to spend all this time working on it. If you're seeing this late, just spend a week. Make something cool, make something quick, and just try it out. It's an excuse to be creative. But anyways, I hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Sir Wade, and I'll see you in the next video.